Hello, I'm Jay Bowman, and I appreciate your interest in FMI's Q4 forecast for 2025. Growing up in Macon, Georgia, I spent a lot of summers down on the Ocmulgee River. Now, towards the end of the season, the water levels would drop, and some of the streams would actually kind of become more of a trickle than anything else. And that visual sort of helps me understand a little bit of what's going on with our Q4 forecast. In some ways, we're seeing slowing in construction spending, but we shouldn't confuse that with stopping. Yes, 2025 looks like it's going to shape up somewhere down 1% compared to 2024, but as we look out over the next 5 years, say through 2029, construction spending should be somewhere around 4% compounded annually over that time period. So not the strongest growth, but growth nonetheless. But that sort of masks a little bit of like, well, where might there be stronger growth? Where do we see more of that flow, if you will, of capital and of spending? Two areas that really stand out being office and lodging. Now, when we say office, what we're really talking about is data centers. That's still sort of captured in that segment. And then on the lodging side, which sometimes surprises people when I share with them that yes, that's growing about 8% compounded annually over the next couple of years, it really comes down to the fundamentals like RevPAR, occupancy, and other rate sort of variables that are involved. Also, though, we're seeing 6% growth compounded annually in areas like power and water supply. In many cases, these are resiliency and also just growth in transmission, but I would argue they also help support what we've seen the growth in data centers and manufacturing. So if we set the bar or total construction spending at 4% over the next 5 years, which one of those are falling behind? Where is that trickle, if you will, in activity? Well, two areas that I think stand out most are single-family homes, which are forecast to grow at about a 3% compound annual rate over the next 5 years, and manufacturing at 2%. On the single-family side, really it's an affordability issue. When we look at rates, when we think about payment to income being exceptionally high, all of those things factoring in. Even multifamily is not immune, where we're seeing increasing vacancy rates in areas like the Sun Belt. And there's obviously like a follow-on effect of that into the kind of the commercial side. But then on manufacturing, again, about 2% compounded annually over the next 5 years, after what we consider being exceedingly strong growth over the last couple of years. But I'm not really too concerned about that sort of slowing of growth. Because when we say 2%, again, just like my analogy of the river, that a slowdown is not the same as stopping, we're still at astronomical highs in manufacturing. In fact, in 2025 alone, manufacturing is probably right around about $230 billion, compared to lodging, which yes, is growing at 8%, but is only about $23 billion. So even at 2%, it's still 10 times the size of what we're seeing in lodging. And I think that's a lesson for us, is to always kind of balance out not just growth, but what is the volume of activity as well. So how do our peers feel about this operating environment that we're headed into, not just here at the end of 2025, but over the next 5 years? Well, I think a good barometer of that is the Non-Residential Construction Index, or NRCI. Now for Q4, that number did retreat some to 47.9. So it's still below that 50 level, which suggests that they feel the market is contracting. Now, what's interesting about that is that those people who responded to the NRCI still reported increasing backlogs and actually confidence in their business. Now, there's a whole lot more to unpack here, so I encourage you to download the full report at our website, fmicorp.com. Better yet, as I always say, call one of our bankers, call one of our consultants, and talk to them specifically about what's going on in your markets and in your company and how you can navigate the world to come. And going back to what I was saying about the Ocmulgee River, while at the end of summer, yes, the water level was down, the flow wasn't as strong, and some streams turned to a trickle. But seasons would change and a new season would come when the waters would rise and we'd see a flow again. That's the same thing we're going to see in construction. So how do you prepare now for when those flows return and your company is ready to take advantage of it?